All right, today we're going to unpack a metric that is absolutely critical for anyone who manages physical assets. We're talking about availability. This is a number that can tell you a whole lot about the health of your operation, so let's just dive right in. So let's kick things off with a question that really gets to the heart of the matter. Is your equipment really working as much as you think it is? I mean, it's easy to assume everything's humming along just fine, but availability, well, that's the metric that gives us the cold, hard data so we know for sure. So what in the world is asset availability? Let's break down the core idea behind this really essential metric. Okay, so the official definition from the Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, or SMRP for short, is actually surprisingly simple. Availability is just the percentage of time that your asset is actually operating, we call that its uptime, compared to the total time it was scheduled to operate. Basically, it's a straight-up measure of whether an asset is ready to go when you need it. To make this crystal clear, just think about your car for a second. Its availability isn't about the 24 hours in a day. Nope, it's about whether it starts and runs every single time you need to get to work or go to the store, right? If it's sitting in the repair shop when you need to leave, well, its availability at that moment is zero. Pretty simple when you think of it that way. All right, so now that we've got the concept down, let's pop the hood and take a look at the formula. And don't worry, the math here is really straightforward. Breaking it down is going to make everything just click into place. And here it is. So, availability is uptime divided by, and this part's important, total available time minus idle time. Now, it looks simple, but the real key is knowing what each of these things actually means. So, let's tackle them one by one. First up, uptime. This is the good stuff. This is the time your machine is actually running, actually making a product or doing the exact job it was put there to do. This is the golden, productive time we're always trying to maximize. Next, we have idle time. And this is a super important distinction. Idle time is when an asset is perfectly fine, it's ready to work, but it isn't running because of some outside reason, like there's no demand or you're waiting on materials. We subtract this from the calculation because, well, it's not fair to penalize the machine's availability for something that's totally out of its control. And that brings us to total available time. This is our baseline, It's the total number of hours the asset was scheduled to be up and running. This is the planned piece of the puzzle that we measure everything else against. Okay, so we've covered uptime and idle time. But what about all the other times an asset is off? Well, that brings us to downtime. And as we're about to see, not all off time is created equal, not by a long shot. See, downtime itself actually breaks down into two very, very different buckets. You've got your scheduled downtime and your unscheduled downtime. And understanding this split is the absolute key to improving your overall availability. This slide here lays it out perfectly. Scheduled downtime, that's the planned stuff. Think of it like taking your car for its regular oil change. It's necessary, you know it's coming, it's controlled. But unscheduled downtime, that's the flat tire on the freeway. That is the enemy. It's that unexpected breakdown that just crushes your productivity. And it's what we are always fighting to get rid of. Okay, so while that SMRP formula is fantastic for what's happening on the plant floor, in the more academic and engineering worlds, there are actually a few different flavors of availability. You can think of them as different lenses you can pop on for a more specific kind of analysis, depending on what you're trying to figure out. This table shows how each one filters out different kinds of delays. Now, to make sense of the formulas, you just need a couple of terms. MTBF is mean time between failures, and MTTR is mean time to repair. So, inherent availability, that looks at the ideal performance based on the machine's design, stripping out maintenance. Perfect for an engineer deciding what equipment to buy. Then there's achieved availability, which brings in mean time between maintenance, or MTBM. It looks at how effective your maintenance program is, but it ignores things like waiting for parts. And finally, operational availability. This is the whole shebang. It includes all the delays, giving a plant manager the stone-cold truth of what's actually happening on the floor. The point is, you pick the lens that fits the problem you're trying to solve. So we have the definitions, we've got the formulas. Now let's pull this all back into the real world. Because with any metric, you know it, context is everything. Okay, so one thing that trips a lot of people up is the difference between availability and reliability. They're definitely related, but they measure two very different things. Here's the key. Availability is a snapshot in time. Is the machine ready to work right now? Reliability, on the other hand, is about looking into the future. How long can we expect it to run before it fails? You could have a super reliable asset that almost never breaks, but if that one rare repair takes forever, its availability could still be terrible. All right, so let's boil all this down. What are the big things you need to remember? First, availability is your go-to metric for knowing if an asset is ready to perform when you need it. Second, for most of your day-to-day work, that SMRP definition is going to be your most practical and powerful tool. And finally, and this is a big one, remember that availability is just one piece of the performance puzzle. To get the full picture, you have to use it with other metrics like OEE or overall equipment effectiveness to truly get what's going on. And that brings us to our final question, the one I want you to take back with you to your own operations. Now that you can measure availability, are you measuring the right kind for your goals? It's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.